Marc Broussard, welcome to Australian Musician.
Thank you for having me, Greg. I appreciate it, brother.
You're coming to Australia next year to play Bluesfest and also Melbourne and Sydney. What have you heard about Bluesfest?
I've only ever heard amazing things about Bluesfest. Uh, my dear friend JJ Gray has been raving for years and encouraging me to come. To be frank with you, I didn't need much encouragement though. I wanted to come to Australia since I learned that it was a place.
Yeah.
My wife and I both have been massive fans of Australia since we were little kids. I think it probably started with Crocodile Dundee. No offense to him, if that doesn't, hope that doesn't offend anybody, but we both are extremely excited about coming over and spending some time down under. So I couldn't be more grateful
Yeah.
for the Blues Fest for having us.
Tell me about the band that you're bringing with you.
The band that I've got right now is probably one of the best bands on planet Earth, to be quite honest with you. So, there's a place down here in New Orleans called Bourbon Street, and three out of the four guys I have on stage with me cut their teeth on Bourbon Street. One of the guys ended up in Dr. John's band. Um, my guitar player is a genius of a player whose father was on tour with Aerosmith for years, for decades. Um, this band, especially because of how well they sing, is probably the best band I've ever put together. And I've had some amazing bands, bro. Let me tell you, I've
Yeah.
had some incredible bands, but these cats take the biscuit.
Yeah. So many people will be hearing your music for the first time. How will you approach your set list down here?
That's a good question, man. We just released a brand new record. Um, but I put out a record with Joe Bonamassa about a year ago, a blues album that's full of covers of amazing blues tunes. It went so well with Joe that we're going to go back in the studio in January to make an all original blues album.
Okay.
And so I think it'll probably be a mixture of the blues cover album, the blues original album, and the album that I just put out a couple of months ago.
Yeah. Do you play much guitar on stage these days, or do you like to concentrate on the singing?
I do play a lot of guitar. In fact, this new album is very guitar heavy, so it requires me to play a whole lot more than I'm accustomed to be quite honest. But I really enjoy putting the guitar down, man. I like working the stage. I stalk the stage, and it's a lot of fun. I'm not a great dancer. When I first came out 20 years ago, I thought I was going to be bigger than Michael Jackson, and witnessing Prince live definitely disabused me of that notion. My ego died when I saw Prince live. So I'm not the best dancer out there, but I do throw my little step ball change out there every once in a while.
Yeah. Tell me about the guitars you use on stage. Did you borrow anything from your father?
So my dad's guitars have been largely off limits to me for my entire life for very good reason. I was not a very good steward of his guitars. He didn't let me touch his guitars until I was about 12 years old. But one thing he showed me was that Yamaha made a really amazing product. And so I've been playing Yamaha guitars now for about a decade. I'll be playing a Yamaha Rev Star primarily. And then I picked up this guitar out of a little custom shop in Los Angeles while I was making this album, Time is a Thief. It's a rubber bridge guitar. So it's a little crappy. I mean, it's like a pawn shop guitar. It's got a Hawaiian scene painted on it, but it sounds so massive because of this rubber bridge that's been put on it and the electronics that have been placed inside. So I'll be playing those two guitars when I come through.
Yeah. You have such an amazing soulful voice. What kind of warm-up regime do you go through before you hit the stage?
Man, I didn't warm up for years. In fact, in the early years, I would sleep until 5 minutes before the show. My guys hated waking me up for the show because I'm not the best to rise. In the last probably 7 years or so, I had I had a training session with a guy named Mark Baxter, and I attribute that training session with saving my career, to be quite honest with you. He gave me two exercises. One is a vocal fry into a note and then back down. It sounds like this. Ah, ooh, ah. I work up and down the scale with that. And then the other is isolating the tongue. In fact, Mark had me actually hold my tongue with a paper towel, isolating the tongue and just doing a ga, 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 ga. Those two exercises I do for about an hour before the show, and they seem to do all the training I need. I asked him, in fact, I asked Mark after that initial session with him because he's got a ton of videos available on his website. I said, should I start going through the videos on your website? He said, nah, don't worry about it. These two exercises will do you just fine. And he wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
I I, I owe this man a massive debt. It was the best $150 I ever spent in my life.
Yeah. We mentioned your father before, Ted Broussard, an acclaimed, respected Louisiana musician. Did he encourage music with you when you were younger, or did it just happen organically?
I have two older brothers, and I think he encouraged all three of us to play something. My older brothers didn't necessarily have the passion or the ear for melody as much as I did. I was about 5.5 years old when my dad realized that I could sing in key and follow him if he modulated. And he absolutely encouraged me from that point on. He brought me around for shows occasionally. I would perform mostly Johnny Be Good back in those days. But the first four songs that he taught me were Johnny Be Good, The Greatest Love of All, uh, Candyman, and Maxwell Silver Hammer, which in retrospect is really surprising because my father was not a fan of the Beatles. Uh, I would say that Maxwell Silver Hammer is probably the only song that he ever learned, really, and he only learned it to teach it to me. But he gave me a very wide berth um, early on. He is a massive jazz fusion fan. I listened to more Chick Corea than probably any vocalist you've ever met in your life. More Weather Report, more Wes Montgomery than any other singer that you've ever heard in your life. But it was the occasional Otis Redding record or the Stevie Wonder record that he would put on that really, really got me running out of the back room and saying, Dad, what is this? You know, James Taylor was a big influence early on. One of the first songs I ever learned on guitar was my father teaching me James Taylor's Never Die Young. And so he was definitely my first champion.
So, what would you consider to be your biggest break, the thing that led you onto this international path?
That's a real good question. Quite honestly, I don't know. In fact, I'm still flabbergasted every time I step on stage to a packed out house. It's it's been a hell of a journey, man. I was opening for Maroon 5 back in 2002 for about a year and a half, and I would say that gave me the opportunity to play in front of folks that were going to respond really well to what I was doing. Those fans are still coming out to my shows. I still see them, 20 years later. So I I have a massive debt of gratitude to Maroon 5 for letting me open up the shows in 2002, 2003, 2004. It was a hell of a ride with those boys, and they were just breaking the surface of fame and stardom back in those days, and they were very gracious to me. I got to sing with them, opening for Bonnie Raitt as well. I got to sing with Bonnie every night on tour. I got to sing Love Singing Up. Um, Working with Joe Bonamassa has been a huge boost. So there's not any one event or one moment that I can really point to that I can say that was the the one spot that gave me the break that I was looking for. We've been simmering in Australia for years now. My manager has been telling me for years now that we've got a substantial following in Australia and we need to get out there. So I'm just exceptionally grateful for for this opportunity to come down there and play some songs.
Yeah. The new album is Time is a Thief. I read where you said that Time is a Thief is your dream or was your dream album to make. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I can. So I was sitting on a batch of material for several years, and I had a particular guy in mind. This guy named Jeremy Most. I wanted him to produce the album, and I tried for 2.5 years to get in touch with Jeremy. He's notoriously difficult to get in touch with, and very, very difficult to confirm that you'll work with him. After 2.5 years, I failed to get in touch with Jeremy Most. Failed to get him to agree to work with me. And so I reached out to an old friend of mine, a guy that I've been a big fan of for a long time, a guy named Eric Krasno. Excuse me. And I said, "Look, Eric, I got a batch of material. I think it's a pretty solid batch, but I think you and I should start writing together just to kind of get the juices flowing, round off the edges of the album." And within a week, we had an entirely new album. We had a brand new album. So almost all of the material that I had brought to the table, which was probably 35 songs, got put in a waste bin in favor of the stuff that I had written with Eric. It was also a very different process. Every record that I've recorded prior was recorded traditionally. Me and a band get in the studio, we record the songs, I sing the songs, we do a little overdubbing and I track all the background vocals and whatnot. This process was very, very different. Eric played all of the instruments. He produced everything prior to me getting out to his studio in Los Angeles. And as such, I'm a little bit older these days. I don't like wasting my time. And so, about 2 weeks prior to me flying out to Los Angeles, I called Eric just to confirm that I was not going to waste my time out there. And sure enough, he says, "No, no, I got a plan, X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Okay, sounds good. I'm excited. I'll see you in 2 weeks." And right before we hang up the phone, he says, "Oh, by the way, J Most is out here. Do you want me to ask him to see if he wants to work with us on this project?" And I said, "What do you mean he's out here? The guy I've been looking for 2.5 years is where?" And he says, "Oh, yeah, he's been living in my guest's bedroom for the past 4 months. He's looking for a place. He's moving from New York to LA, and he's been staying in the guest bed for 4 months." And for me, man, it was this moment. I've had a few of these moments over the course of my career, but this one in particular was a moment where I felt like the universe was kind of giving me a little bit of a wink
Hmm.
and let me know that, hey, man, no matter what you got going on, no matter how frustrated you get, I got you.
Yeah.
And so Jeremy agreed to work with us on the project, and thankfully so. He's a brilliant musician, a brilliant producer, and a doll of a human being. We hit it off immediately. Um, so honestly, this album, on with that story in mind, the material I think is the best showcase for what it is that I do. It's gritty, it's dirty, it's urban, it's soulful, funky. It's got heart. There's really nothing on the album that I would take away. It's my best foot forward so far, in my opinion.
Yeah. And why did Time is a Thief become the title track?
Well, the project started in 2020, March of 2020. So it took this long to wrap things up because of all of the restrictions that were placed on what we do for a living, because of the fear of the unknown with regards to a virus that was ravaging the entire world. It took us a really, really long time to finally to fruition with this project. And I thought Time as a Thief was was definitely the best descriptor of that whole process.
Yeah. Predating Time is a Thief, there were four SOS albums. Can you tell me about the concept of those?
Yeah, well, the first SOS album was actually a response to being dropped from Island Def Jam. I made an album called Karen Crow. It did very, very well. And then there was an entire regime change at Island Def Jam. Leor Cohen and virtually everybody else that worked under Leor left Island Def Jam to various, to various record labels. I made a second effort for Island Def Jam and it was shelved. L.A. Reid, essentially the new CEO, said, I'm not putting this album out. We asked to be let off the label. It had been 3 years since Karen Crow's release, and um, they let us out of our record contract, but they didn't let me take the album that I had just recorded. I was pretty bummed about that because I was very proud of that album. Um, but the consensus was that our best our best option to get something out quickly was to make a covers album. And so we created the SOS1, Save Our Soul. It was an attempt to introduce my young fans, those fans that I had garnered from working with Maroon 5, to introduce them to all the music that had influenced me my entire life. Guys like Bobby Womack and Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye. And when I went independent about 10 years ago, we decided to formalize the SOS project. I created a nonprofit and we started doing these albums to raise money for charitable causes that I'm passionate about, which is pretty standard stuff. It's things like kids with terminal illness and women and children that are homeless and trying to keep kids off the street. What I did not anticipate, and trust me when I tell you, when I had this vision, I was engaged with a brand new management company. They were not on board. They literally said to me, "You don't have the money to give away. You're broke." And I said, "Please trust me, this is going to work." I had no idea that it was going to go as well as it has. Um, Not only are we able to raise tens of thousands of dollars on each one of these projects for amazing causes, but it also gives us the opportunity to record music that we've loved our entire lives. It gives me the opportunity to get a bit more of a breath between original projects while not starving my audience from new music. So I really didn't know how well it was going to go. I just knew that it was going to work, and thankfully, that that whole process has convinced my managers that every harebrained scheme I have is worth pursuing because they don't second guess me anymore.
Yeah. You've been active in a lot of philanthropic work. You've founded a fund to help victims of Hurricane Katrina. 20 years on, how's Louisiana bouncing back?
You know, it's Hurricane Katrina was just one of 3 dozen storms that I've experienced growing up here. New Orleans itself is an anomaly in this state. It's one of the most beautiful, wonderful cities that you'll ever get the opportunity to visit, but it is severely poorly run. It's a town that has a lot of problems. It is a result of corruption that predates my time here on Earth. Um, I mean, the only reason that town flooded was because of levee failures. Those levees only failed on one side of the parish line. Every other state in this country has counties. We have parishes. On Jefferson side, on Jefferson Parish side, the levees just did just fine because those levees were built to specs. On the Orleans Parish side, those levees were not built to specs, and that I suspect greatly was a result of official corruption. That corruption still runs rampant, unfortunately, in that city. My brother and sister-in-law and my niece and nephew live in that city, and I worry about them daily, to be quite honest with you. It's still maybe my favorite city on planet Earth, but it's not a city that I would live in today.
Yeah.
It's it's been a long, slow recovery. You still see tarps on roofs all this time down the road, so it's not been great. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Um, Getting back to the music, a career spanning over 2 decades now. When you look back at your music career, what are the strongest memories?
Oh man, I got to perform with Solomon Burke for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony. We got to pay tribute to Wilson Pickett. That night is probably the coolest night of my life. Um, I was told that the set change was very quick and that I needed to get off stage very quickly. I tried my best to get off stage quickly and I was unable to. So I actually spun back out to the front of the stage. And for a moment there, I was a fly on the wall, looking out at the Waldorf Astoria ballroom and essentially just looking out at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I see back in the corner, I see Ozzy and Sharon and oh, there's Leonard Skinner. Oh, that's Metallica back there. Oh, there's Bonnie Raitt. Oh, that's Ahmet Ertegun, who founded Atlantic Records, hanging out with Kid Rock. And oh, that's Brian May from Queen. And I'm just scanning this room. And again, I'm a fly on the wall. Nobody is noticing me until I get to Sting. And Sting has been waiting for me to see him this entire time. And as soon as we lock eyes, he throws me the biggest thumbs up ever. And I just kind of lost my head for a second. I was just like, "Oh my God." Ah. I tried to get to Sting for the rest of the night. I couldn't do it. Where I was seated was right on the front row. You had to walk next to me to get to the bathroom. And at some point, he starts walking down the aisle to go to the bathroom. And I just stood up in front of him. And he grabs me by the shoulders, pulls me in for a hug, and says, "Young man, you are amazing." And I think my response was, "Your Sting." But that was a hell of a night for me, man. I got to high five Metallica. I got to take a piss next to Ozzy. It was a wild night.
Doesn't get much better than that, does it?
No, it was a wild night.
So, what are you looking forward to most about coming down here to Australia?
Uh, Honestly, I'm looking forward to the hang with my wife for about a week after we play the shows. The wife and I, again, have been dying to come to Australia for our entire lives, man. It's a place that has always intrigued both of us. Um, and a place that we both wanted to go for our entire lives. So I'm really just looking forward to hanging with the wife after the shows. The shows will be fine. That's just old hat. We do that everywhere. But I'm looking to hang out and maybe, go walk about a little bit.
Yeah. Mark, it's been great to catch up. Time is a Thief is a new album out now. It's a great album, and we really look forward to seeing you at Bluesfest and Melbourne and Sydney shows.
Thank you so much for having me, Greg. I appreciate you, brother.